Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Book 2 of his On the Nature of the Gods, Cicero has Balbus the Stoic present something that is in fact really key to the Stoic approach to the gods, and it involves what we can call allegorical interpretation. Now, the Stoics were not the only people who engaged in this. As a matter of fact, there's all sorts of other people who did it, and this eventually gets incorporated into later, for example, Christian allegorical interpretation of Scripture. And for the philosophers, like the Stoics, the question was, well, what do we do with these stories about the Greek, or in this case, Roman counterparts of the gods, where they seem kind of not so great people, right? You know, think about, for example, Zeus or Jove or Jupiter, and the fact that he screws around on his wife, Hera or Juno, so frequently that she gets quite upset and jealous and often tries to kill the offspring from these philandering affairs. Okay, is that befitting of a god? And, there's a couple ways you can go with this. One way is to say, yes, indeed, the gods are very similar to human beings. And Balbus is going to say that, people, ordinary people, and poets are going to think that the gods have human form, right? They're like us, and this furnishes the poets with legends, fabulas, and it leads to superstition. So people go to the temple thinking that, I'll just pray a lot and this God will help me out with this particular thing. Or they take the example and they're like, well, it's okay for Zeus to do this, must be okay for me to do this, right? And the Stoics, beginning with Zeno and then continuing through the next two scholarchs, leaders of the school, Cleanthes, his successor, and Chrysippus, his successor, are going to engage in what we nowadays call allegorical interpretation, and it was being used as a term back then as well. And so we read that the subject was handled, tractatus, by Zeno, and then it was explained more fully, explicatus pluribus verbis, more fully by Cleanthes and Chrysippus. So there's an ongoing development that's taking place. And then we get a long discussion of what it is that we can say about these various gods. And we're going to just use the Roman Latin names because that's what Cicero does in this. And you're going to notice there's a lot of appeals to etymology here. This God is called this from this thing, which is what they actually represent. So he begins by talking about Saturn and Uranus, which is being called here Kailus, right? Heaven. Uranus is the sky. So Saturn, or Kronos in Greek, Saturn is supposed to have castrated his father. It's, being talked about here as mutilated, but it's actually he cut his testicles off, throws them into the sea. And then Saturn himself was thrown into bondage by his son Jove or Jupiter. And it's a funny turn of phrase here. These immoral fables, right? Immoral because they're representing the gods as kind of bad guys. Cutting your dad's testicles off, not a good thing. Throwing your dad into chains, also not a good thing. So how can we understand this in an allegorical way so that the stories can be kept, but we're not believing the stories on a literal level? We're saying they stand for something else. So he says that their meaning was that the highest element of celestial ether or fire, which by itself generates all things, is devoid of that bodily part which requires union with another for the work of procreation. So Kailos, heaven, or Uranus doesn't need testicles because it can create all by itself. And then by Saturn, they denoted that being who maintains the course and revolution of seasons and periods of time. The deity actually so designated in Greek as Chronos, which is the same as chronos, a space of time. The Latin designation Saturn is due to the fact that he is saturated or satiated with years. The fable is that he was in the habit of devouring his children, meaning that time devours the ages and gorges himself insatiably with the years that are past. So, we're getting a different kind of story that's being told here. What about Jove or Jupiter or Zeus and Saturn or Kronos? Well, here we learn Saturn was bound by Jove in order that time's courses might not be unlimited, and Jove might fetter him by the bonds of the stars. So how would this work in terms of explaining or teaching? You've got the fables in place. Kids are learning them. They're being used in poetry, in stories, fables, in theatrical productions, and even in artwork as well. And then you can say, aha, so that's just a symbol. Here's what's really going on. We're going to give you a natural, philosophical explanation of that. Then we get a discussion of Jupiter, Jove himself. What does it mean? The helping father, whom with a change of inflection we style Jove from juvere, Jove in Latin. The poets call him father of gods and men, and our ancestors entitled him best and greatest, putting the title best, that is most beneficent, before that of greatest, because universal beneficence is greater or more lovable than the possession of great wealth. And so that's explaining what Zeus is doing, and then there's a little bit of digression about lightning and thunder, which are associated with Jove or Zeus. So all that means is the sky is lightning and thundering. And then we get Zeus or Jove's sister and wife, Juno, Hera in Greek, right? What is Hera? The air lying between the sea and sky is, according to the Stoic theory, deified under the name belonging to Juno, because it resembles and is closely connected with the ether. They made it female and assigned it to Juno because of its extreme softness. The name of Juno, I believe, to be derived from juvere, to help. Okay, so that's another explanation. Then we have two brothers of both Juno and Jupiter. We have Neptune, god of the sea. Where does that come from? Well, he's got a story for that. The second kingdom, the entire realm of the sea, was assigned to Neptune. His name is derived from nare, to swim, with a slight alteration of the earlier letters and with a suffix seen in portunus, the harbor god, derived from portus, the harbor. So that explains Neptune. He's the god of the sea. Then we have what in Greek is Hades, in Latin Pluto. And this is the god of the underworld, of literally the world below, and of death. And so we read here, the entire bulk and substance of the earth was dedicated to Father Dis, that is Dives, the rich, and so in Greek, Pluton, because all things fall back into the earth and arise from the earth. And then we're going to get Persephone or Proserpina, the daughter of Ceres or Demeter. Hades is, Pluto is said to have married Proserpina, and she represents the seed of corn. She was hidden away, sought for by her mother. You put the corn, or we would say the wheat or barley, into the earth, and then it springs forth. Who's her mother? Ceres, which is, according to Balbus, a corruption of geres. Very close term, coming from gero, because she bears the crops. The same accidental change of the first letter is seen in Demeter, a corruption of Ge-meter, Mother Earth. Then we get a god that we don't talk much about, Mavors, from Magna Vertere, the overturner of the great. And then a very important goddess, Minerva, Athena in Greek, right? Who's more domestic, we could say, in Latin. She is the one who minishes, or the one who is minatori, right? So helping out. Then we have a god who's not found in the Greek stuff, but is distinctively Roman or Latin. Janus, the two-faced god, the one that we get January from because the year is beginning there. So what do we get Janus from? He was the leader in a sacrifice, his name being derived from ire, to go, hence the name Jani for archways and Janui for the front doors of secular buildings. Okay. Vesta, the fifth, or actually sixth, because we've already talked about Demeter, of the brothers and sisters, who include Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, Juno, Ceres, and then we have Vesta. And Vesta is actually coming from the Greeks. She is the goddess who they call Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, right? Her power extends over altars and hearths, and all prayers and sacrifices end with her because she's the guardian of the innermost things. Closely related to this, we have the Penates, the household gods. Each household would have its own Penates, and it's derived either from penus, which is a store of human food, or the fact that they reside penitus, in the recesses of the house. Then we get Apollo. Apollo is the same, by the way, in Greek and Latin, interestingly. And you say, Apollo is from Greek. They say he's the sun. Diana, his sister, Artemis, they identify with the moon. The word soul being from solus, because the sun is all alone in the heavenly skies. And Luna is derived from lucere, to shine. It's the same word as lucina, and therefore in our country, Eunolokina is invoked in childbirth, as is Diana in her manifestation as Lucifera, the light bringer among the Greeks. And then they talk about her also being Diana omnivaga, wide wandering, not from her hunting, which is what she's legendarily associated with, but because she's counted as one of the 7 stars or planets, the wanderers, the vagari, right? So all of these interesting things are connected with the gods, and you notice the common theme. None of the gods are like us human beings. They're all, we could say, cosmic forces that we human beings have tried to understand and grasp, and perhaps have distorted by our storytelling. And the Stoics are saying, we've actually got the real deal, and you can figure this out by relying on the derivations of words, or etymology, and thinking about what each of them is a symbol of.